Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event. Fight fans worldwide, you've tuned into the #1 undisputed boxing podcast today. This is the Boxing Breakdown. Now, your heavy-handed, hard-hitting host, Mark Roxey.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of the Boxing Breakdown. I am your host, Mark Roxey, and I am here with special guest, Mr. Harold Hunt. What's up, Harold?
What's up, man? How you doing, man? Good stuff coming up here, boy. I'll tell you that.
Listen, man, I don't know about you, but I'm still kind of reeling from last night. This is a big day, folks, because we are so excited. We've been so anxious and excited about this huge fight between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, which took place last night in Las Vegas, and it was incredible. Just absolutely incredible. The build up to the fight was incredible. And of course the fight, played out like a soap opera, and it was just absolutely, unexpected, really, really unexpected. And so, we're going to get into this. But I just want to thank you if you're listening to the podcast on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, wherever that is. Thank you for tuning in. And you're going to hear a really fun-spirited conversation about this fight. And if you didn't hear our predictions, go back into the podcast, either on Apple Podcasts or on YouTube, and you can see what we said about this fight before it happened. You can, check us. I had somebody, Harold, called me last night. I don't even know who it was. I honestly don't know who the guy was. But I was driving. I was driving with my wife, and the phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and the guy's like, "Hey, yo, bro, what's up, man?" I'm like, "What's up? Who's this?" He goes, "This is, I'm not going to say his name, but he's like, this is blah, 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 blah." And the name doesn't ring a bell, bro. And then he proceeds to ask me for my advice as to who's going to win the fight. And, I really need to know. I'm about to place a bet. Can you please give me some information on who you think is going to win the fight? And so I said, well, I'm not really responsible for your betting habit and all that stuff. So, if you got that and it's a problem, you should definitely get some help for that. But, I said, listen, man, all I can tell you is how I think the fight can go. And there's a lot of different directions this fight can go. And we talked about that. And at the end of the conversation, it was like, "Yo, thank you so much, man. I'll catch up with you later." I was like, "Okay, bye." And I said to my wife, "Who is this? I don't even know who that was who just called me." So anyway, that's the kind of hype that's been around this fight. People was just bonkers about it. So Harold, let's get into this thing, bro. Let's get into it. You saw the fight last night, am I right?
Yes, I did.
All right, let's start off. Go.
Well, first I want to give homage to the WBA.
Yes.
I'm a WBA judge, and they were a part of the whole situation.
Yeah, of course.
And I was happy that all four sanctioning bodies came together, although they were going to do anyway because the sanctioning fees are good. Right. And they're part of history now. So just wanted to wear, because I usually wear the hat that you have on, Mark. That you have on now. I usually wear that, but I want to do this today. Right. So we had the fight on last evening. And from the very beginning, all the press conferences and all that stuff was very amicable amongst the fighters. Right. And I was glad to see that. They didn't go back and forth. There was no negativity. It was just that they knew they were going to make history, and the world was looking for this fight. So I was glad to see that. Any kind of back and forth came from the family members and the entourage or whatever. Between those two, they were amicable and professional, and I was glad to see that. Yeah. As far as the fight is concerned, Mark, it started with the outfit. Well, no, it started with Spence coming out, with a local rapper from Dallas who was really good, great beat or whatever. But when Crawford came out with Eminem,
Yeah.
And Eminem came out and he talked about, his, he did a song, I've never seen a rapper come out and not mouth his own song. That song was so large, he just walked out. Every other fighter I've ever seen, whether they're mouthing their song or they're rapping along with their own song, Eminem didn't even do that. He introduced them and he walked out with his song playing. Now that's boss, because the world knows that song.
Yeah. And tell the listeners what song it was. Do you remember the title of the song?
I don't remember the title of the song. I know the song I noticed the name of the song escapes me at this present time just because of excitement, but it's a very popular song.
Yeah, if you are listening in and you know the name of that song, just hit it in our comments. We're going to check out our comments and see what we got anyway. But put your comments in there if you know the name of the song that he came out with, because Harold and I have, it's escaped us the name of that song, but you probably know it and we should know it, but we don't. And
I'm ashamed that I don't. Now, Bud's outfit had fishnet on it.
Yeah.
He had a fishnet on his trunks and he had fishnet on his shoes.
Crazy.
Because the whole thing was to catch the big fish.
Right.
And that right there was just beautiful. That was well done. He had his own private guy in Everlast. They went together and they put together outfits for him. So that was impressive. So when it came into the ring, they were still amicable and all that type of thing. Now, started getting to the fight. The very first round, Spence tried to establish that jab, which he did. He won the round because he established the jab. But you could see that Crawford took that jab away from him. Now, in the press conference earlier, he said that he knew in the first round that he had him by speed, and he knew that that overhand right was something he could continue with, and that he had control of the fight. When I was watching the fight, the second minute of the second round, I said, Bud got this. And that was it.
Yeah.
I was with a group of people. I said, it's over. Bud's got it. And, and exactly what happened. So it was a great, great opportunity. The first round was good. He saw what was going on. And then subsequently, Mark, as you know, it just began to see such levels of skill set that didn't, that just showed itself.
Right. No, I mean, last night, listen, folks, if you didn't get to see the fight, you missed a great fight. It really, really was a remarkable fight. And to be honest, like Harold and I have been looking forward to this fight for over a year. And we've been talking about it. If you go back, you can hear on a lot of the little past podcasts, we're always mentioning the fight. We're always talking about the fight. Terence Bud Crawford, the undefeated 3-division champion, last night made a remarkable commentary statement, whatever you want to call it, and basically etched himself into the history books by becoming the first undisputed welterweight champion of a 4-belt era. So, he achieved this with a 9-round TKO over Errol the Truth Spence Jr. The showdown, a part of the Showtime pay-per-view main event, took place on Saturday night at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas under the banner of Premier Boxing Champions. And, again, we've been saying this all year that Al Heyman, man, the guy just knows how to put these things together, and they're great fights. And, the fighters always come out on top. And, it was amazing. It was an amazing fight. So go ahead, Errol.
Okay, let's go back to the rounds. Okay, you got the second round coming up here. The first round, Spence actually did win just because he was trying to establish himself. And from a judge standpoint, he did win because he landed a few punches. He was aggressive. He did land maybe 1 or 2 more punches if you want to count punches, which we really don't do. He did, in fact, win that round just by a small margin, but he did win that round. The second round, that's when we saw some changes. We saw some distances being navigated. Spence, of course, was going to continue to try to come forward. And as he came forward and started getting into his rhythm, he was getting countered. He was getting countered. And that was something he wasn't used to seeing coming back. Now, as we know, Crawford did say post-fight that the main thing they worked on was the power jab. Instead of a flicking jab, they used a power jab because they need to stop him in his tracks. Most fighters know that jab is coming. It's not a power jab necessarily, something that's kind of touches you and lines you up for the right hand from your opponent. But this jab, it was more than just a range fight. It was a power jab. So as he came forward, expecting to feel that jab, it was a power jab. Now, I found out recently by talking and hearing some information how Bud is ambidextrous. He's not ambidextrous that's how God made him. I have a child who was even-handed. Yeah. Ambidextrous, even-handed. Bud was not like that. Bud hurt his hand in school, his right hand in school. And it took a long time to heal. But he was in sports and all that, so he's forced to use his left hand. He actually forced himself to make his left hand as strong as his right hand while he was in school. Right. So that discipline, whatever happened with his left arm, the left side of his brain, I don't know what it was, but he became even-handed, not because of his DNA. He became even-handed because he was forced to be even-handed. And that's why that left hand, that right hand has the same equal power, because the right hand was not usable for 6 months of his life. And he was forced to do that, write with it, eat with it, everything with that left hand. Yeah. And that include boxing. So as he stood in front of Spence, with the left-handed stance, he was powerful on both sides. And as we know, he was able to go back and forth because of the wrestling background, as I said before, and he was just really a dominant. So just to quickly on that, he knocked Spence down. It was a flash knockdown. It was just that he stepped into it, and when you run into a wall, you're going to go back. It may not hurt you, but it's going to stop your momentum. So that first knockdown was a flash knockdown. There was no pain there, but it let him know that he could get hit coming in there in such a way.
Yeah, you're talking about, and for the folks who are listening in, Harold didn't mention that he's talking about in round 2, right? You're talking about the first knockdown,
first knockdown.
Yeah, and even in the post, Bud said that was really a flash knockdown. It wasn't really.
He did.
But again, Spence did go down. He did go down there, and looking at the fight. I just felt like there was a size differential. I just felt like there was a power differential that was so significant. You would never, ever notice the power differential until you put them both in the ring at the same time. You just don't understand. Like power is a very real thing. And that jab, Terence Crawford's jab, was the story of the fight, because his jab took away Spence's vision. It took away Spence's jab, and it set up all those, power counter overhand lefts, the check hooks, the body shot, the uppercut that dropped him again later on in the fight. That jab and for all you boxers and coaches that are out there, that's a really good textbook view of how to use the jab, why it's so important to make sure that your fighter has that kind of a jab, because without that jab, you are not getting through. You're just not going to break through. And you could see that even in Spence. Every time Spence tried to land the jab, he either pulled back straight because he was afraid of the counters, he hesitated, or he leaned to his left side. And what that did was that set up Bud's overhand left counter, which put him down, or the uppercut when he dipped down to his right. So you could see in the fight how not spending the time on the jab can result in this kind of an outcome. And at the end of the day, I just think that they were not as evenly matched as many of the pundits and many of the people in the boxing world even felt. I mean, because I did make a case in our last episode of the Boxing Breakdown that I felt that there was a scenario that would play out where, Errol Spence would not fight the way he had been fighting in past fights, which we talked about, the lean over, coming right behind the jab, pulling straight back. We talked about that, but he didn't make that adjustment going into this fight. And Bud Crawford, hats off, biggest fight of his career, biggest fight in the history of these two gentlemen. And Bud Crawford took his moment. He took his moment, Harold.
Yes. Let's go to the third round. There was a knockdown, of course, and Bud, the round was over. Third round comes up here. Spence says, I got to step in here and I've got to do what I have to do. So as he did that, Mark, as you said, he started coming over the top with that power jab.
Down.
Coming over the top with the power jab as Spence threw his jab. Like you said, he had to try to get away from that jab. He was tentative. It threw his timing off. And he basically took that jab and made Spence put that that right hand jab in his pocket.
Right.
So you have a man with his hand in his pocket, his best attribute, his right hand jab that says of everything, that hand is in his pocket.
Yeah.
He's holding the change in his pocket. So he's wide open for all that. After a while, that jab that Crawford was throwing turned into a hook because the distance was short. He was in the pocket with him trying to land what he was landing.
Yeah.
And, you boxing people know that the hook is very powerful from either side, whether you're ambidextrous or not, just the way your body twerks it. The hook is great. So he was landing that thing as you go forward. So the third round, I saw Spence seeing that he would have to kind of sell out to a point. And he kept coming forward. He was putting his best effort in. It's just that Crawford, to me, just knew what was going to happen. He saw it coming, and mentally, he knew he was strong. Now, in the press conference, he said that after the first round, he knew he was stronger, and he knew that he would win the fight.
Yeah.
I saw, as I said, the beginning of the second round, but himself being in the ring, feeling the pressure, feeling the power, he knew he was a stronger fighter. He knew he had him after the end of the first round. Now, mentally, that is powerful.
Well, Harold, imagine you're for those of you that haven't been in this situation, and for those of you that have been in this situation, like you get into the third round here, right? Your coach says, pick it up. Let's start using that jab the right way. Let's start pressing, right? And then what you're met with is precision and timing. You're met with Crawford's accuracy and his ability to do what we know he does, which is find his spots off the counters. He's a master counter puncher, probably one of the best in the history of being a counter puncher. That's what he does. And so, Crawford using the counter punches, basically you come out of the third round, and Spence is like, yo, bro, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know what to do. I'm sure he was thinking coming out of the third round, in between third and fourth round, like, hey, man, I don't know how to deal with this. You're telling me to pick it up, but he's countering everything I do. Right? So now what do? We go into the fourth round, Harold, right?
Yes, yes. Now, Bud is switching.
Yeah.
He's going southpaw and back and forth on a whim. He's just spinning either way.
Right.
And as I said before, that comes from that wrestling type situation. Because when you're a wrestler, there's no right-handed way you wrestle. There's no left-handed way you wrestle. You just wrestle on either side that the action is. And that's a discipline that he was able to apply in the boxing ring. I've never seen wrestling and boxing so intertwined where the wrestling part of it was so prominent because he was a stronger man. Every time Spence, who usually bullies people, pushes them back, gets them in and pushes them back, he could not push Crawford back.
Right.
Crawford would purposely push him back as he came in to try to put that body on and move him back. He would stand his ground and move him back. Not throwing punches,
Harold,
just saying, look, I am stronger.
Harold, his base was so phenomenal. And when you talk about wrestling, and let's talk about coaching, right? You're looking at a fighter who's so evenly balanced. His weight is balanced properly. He knows, being the counterpuncher he is, he understands that Errol Spence is dropping in and dropping out of every exchange. He's dropping into the range and he's dropping out of the range. And Crawford understood that. He knew he could set down for that one quick moment and land those combinations on the counters. And that's where, like in round 4, Spence gets cut. He's cut in round 4. And now the overhand rights start coming in off the counters. The left hooks come in, the uppercuts. There's all this stuff that's happening, right? So by the end of round 4, what we're really looking at is a total domination from Crawford. And now you're in 4. Now you're behind, right? What do you do? Harold, what do you do?
Well, what he attempted to do and he tried to do and he wanted to do was he felt like he could just physically start walking him down. Uh-huh. However, when he was landing his patented stuff, something was coming back just as hard.
Yeah.
Every time he got knocked down, he landed a punch, but his punch landed, but the punch he took knocked him down.
Yes.
I mean, we're at the 5th round now, so we have subsequent knocks down further on. But at that point, 4th and the 5th round, he was landing a few punches, but he was getting countered hard every time. And after a while, he was like, I got to keep doing this, but I keep taking this recourse every time. Yeah. And he was trying to figure it out, but he didn't have anything else to go to. He didn't start boxing, anything. He started retreating some, but that's not what he does usually. So he had to abandon that, Mark.
Yeah, no, he absolutely, he did abandon that. But, as we went into the 5th round, as you're going into the 5th round, the scores I had 39-36. I had us into the 5th round at 39-36, and I think most of the judges had probably that same score. But, in the 5th round, they bring in the ring doctor. Now I'm sitting there, I'm getting really worried because I know Errol Spence has that detached retina. And I'm thinking he's getting his butt, he's getting served here. Let's just say that. It was really an outclassing issue at that point. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what's up with this guy's eye? The crowd has no respect for any kind of concern for these two fighters. The crowd is going nuts. The crowd is screaming, boo, keep the fight going. Don't stop the fight. But really, the doctors step in. They're looking at him to make sure that detached retina hasn't come undone. And he does it. He looks a little lucid, right? Did you notice that in round 5?
Yes. Initially, I didn't necessarily like the doctor coming in because I knew the eye was fine. Yeah. I just think he was taking a little some punishment, more. But I didn't necessarily like. But then after I looked at it, I saw what was going on. It was approval. However, mentally, for Spence to have the doctor standing in front of him so early in the fight, that is not good for his psyche. Like, what? I'm getting beat up that bad. Did you guys stand in front of me this early in the fight? Right. That wasn't good. Okay. For the crowd to see that the doctor standing in there, like, oh man, this is the greatest fight in the world. There's a doctor in the 3rd round, the 5th round, whatever it was already. What's going on? Yeah. So I see their standpoint because humans are what they are. They want the blood sport. I understand that. But I'm just saying from the mental standpoint of Spence fans, everybody else, the doctor standing in front of him early in the fight, that is not good for them nor Spence to say, man, what? So the doctor stood in, he got out the way, and Spence continued to be, I thought he was, he was okay. So to me, it was good and bad. Like you said, watch that retina, but the retina wasn't the issue. He was just taking some clean blows. Yeah. For me, I'm looking at his face. And I'm seeing, I do cuts. I'm a cut man. I do cuts for fighters all the time. As soon as I see a fighter get cut, I know exactly what's going on there. He was cut. Thank God it was on his cheek, right? He had one cut on the cheek. He had another cut, like his eye was all busted up. You're starting to see, Spence filled with blood. He's coming back filled with blood. He's spitting tons of blood out into the bucket. It's like, it's not a good look. So you got to wonder what's the weakest point? You're only as good as your weakest point. So if you got this detached retina, what's happening behind that retina if you're coming back to the corner looking like that? That was my concern. The fans don't care. The fans, they just want to see a knockout. They want to see a fight. And now in the round 6, you can taste it. There isn't anybody in the arena or anybody watching around the world that's saying to themselves, this is going to end up really good for Spence. And in the 6th round,
I think it was the 6th round, Spence did land a really good shot on Crawford.
As he did.
But that was the story of the fight. That was like, I mean, you're talking about an outclassing, but he still lost that round. It's not like he won round 6. He lost round 6.
No, he had the most shocking type land on Crawford that was, very clear for the world to see, it was clean and all that kind of thing. So, yeah, he did do that, but he did still lose the round. I want to go back to the eye quickly. Supposedly, surgery today makes that detached retina stronger than your natural attachment. So, if you want to go that way, his eye was not in a negative situation because he went through the surgery. Technology is what it is. Supposedly his eye is in better shape than his normal eye. So I never even looked at that. Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid and I believe that, or maybe that's actually the case. I don't know. Mark, you would know better than I. But from my standpoint, that's how I saw it. So going forward, as far as him landing that large punch and looking like he could move something around, it was taken away so suddenly. He landed that great punch, and all of a sudden, boom, 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 he got hit with 3 right back.
Yeah, that's frustrating. And I can't imagine what his coach is feeling when he's getting popped like that, because that's not something that Errol Spence is not used to experiencing that. He had never experienced that before. So, he's been touched up, but he's never been touched like that. Like he has. I've never seen a fight where Spence was touched like that. The other thing is, in round 6, Crawford had his legs. He was doing a stinky leg a couple of times, meaning Spence. Spence was not in good condition in that round 6. And he was throwing shots that were landing below the belt. He was hitting Crawford below the belt, landing, punches on the... And Harvey Dock, God bless him. I've worked with him, and he's a great referee, really, really great guy, great human being, beyond being a referee. It's a pleasure to even be able to know him. He's such a cool dude, right? But Harvey Dock, he gave Spence a final warning for the low blows that were being landed. And at the end of the 6th round, Harold, it was 59-54. That's what I got, 59-54. Did you actually score it, or did you just watch it?
Well, I watched it, and then I watched it again, then I scored it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be a fan initially because I wanted the excitement of that. Because as I said before, when I'm judging, I have a completely different mindset. it's not entertainment. It's a job that I enjoy, but it's not entertainment.
Yeah.
But when I watched it initially, it was for the entertainment of it. And then I apply my expertise or whatever in my mind when I watched the second time. But I will say this, after that 6th round, we saw some great opportunities that Spence tried to get, and each time he thought he had them, they were taken from him. So, do you want to go to the 7th round now? The monumental 7th round that rocked the world, that will be sound bites and video bites all over the world for the next 2 weeks or so.
So, Harold, before we do that, I do want to get into the 7th round. But just before we do that, I just want to thank you guys for listening in again to the Boxing Breakdown. You are listening to the Boxing Breakdown, the #1 boxing podcast in America. Thank you for tuning in. And just remember, right? You can find us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the notification so we're going live. And don't forget to leave your comments. You can leave your comments now. You can leave your comments after the fact, because they'll always be up on YouTube. So you can always find it there, okay? And also like us on, wherever we are on the social platforms. We are at The Boxing Breakdown. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on LinkedIn. We have a wonderful channel on LinkedIn that has all of our previous podcasts. And if you'd like to actually look at the archives of all of the podcasts, you can do so at roxysportsentertainment.com/The Boxing Breakdown. That's what's up, brother. All right, so let's get back. Let's get into the round 7. Talk to me.
All right. 7, as I said, was a monumental round. What you had there is opportunities for Spence to sell out. I've got to sell out. I'm down. I know I'm down.
Yeah.
I'm bleeding. I'm seeing the looks in the faces of my corner people, right? I'm looking around the crowd and I see the situation. And I see the supreme confidence in Crawford's face.
Yes.
I've got to change all of that now. So he went out in the 7th round. It was like, I'm on my shield here.
Yeah.
Not to survive, but to make my way seen. And that's what he attempted to do.
Yeah.
Doing that, he stepped right into the lion's den and he started getting hit. Now, going forward, he kept taking them. And he had a beautiful opportunity with Crawford on the ropes. Nice. He set it up nicely. He stepped to it. He threw his right hook. But guess what? Our boy Crawford had positioned himself with the backs to the ropes,
right,
which is not a good angle because you can't really deliver power unless you worked on that. And he actually worked on that. So when he came in, he hit him with that uppercut. Yeah. And if you see the slow motion of that, he set his feet, his back was straight against the ropes, but he had the torque and he hit him clean with it. Now, he hit him clean and he stopped the punch. Well, he took the punch from Spence, but he hit him with the uppercut. But as Spence was going back, he was able to land another punch before Spence hit the canvas. Yeah. So he had the uppercut, step forward, and delivered a left hand as Spence was still going down.
Overhand.
That is from working in the gym, knowing that once that uppercut lands, that man's going to be available for another punch before he's deposited on the canvas. Yeah. That is just work in the gym.
Yeah. Yo, Harold, look. He is one of the best finishers in the sport right now. I mean, you get hurt, Crawford's going to finish you. He's going to finish you. I mean, he is such a beast at finishing. So, I was expecting that in round 7, he was going to finish him. Unfortunately, or fortunately for Spence, he lived to fight another round because the bell had just rung, right? The bell, he beats the count. Once again, that's 2 times in round 7, right?
But we didn't talk about the second knockdown, round 7 yet.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm just setting it up.
Okay, the second knockdown, that was the most telling knockdown of the entire fight. Because
Why?
To me, when he hit him with that, I think it was a right hand, the punch threw Spence into the rope. When you get hit with a punch, usually you'll drop or you'll stagger or whatever. When he was hit with that punch, I wouldn't say he went airborne, but when he was hit with that punch propelled him into the ropes. That's the kind of power and leverage was there. It wasn't a flash knockdown. It wasn't something that you run into and your own momentum causes to be, so violent or whatever, because you're running in, it's like a baseball when a power hitter hits a fastball.
Right.
There wasn't even that. This was a situation where the hitter caused all the inertia, all the force came from Crawford to Spence, and it threw him into the ropes, onto the canvas. Yeah. That was extremely powerful punch with someone with kind of weak legs and the torque and the turn. It was just very powerful. That was the most violent punches that I saw, other than the stoppage that occurred earlier, which he didn't go down to the canvas, but that was very, very violent. The second knockdown, which caused a 10-7 round.
Right. Can I ask you a question? Like, why I don't think anybody ever thought that Crawford would have been able to do what Crawford did in this fight. I don't think everybody, including myself, including, all of us, I'm not going to say we doubted Crawford. We just needed to be convinced. And last night, Crawford convinced me that he really could possibly be the best fighter on the planet. After his performance last night against a guy, in Errol Spence, who has never been down like that before, have never been knocked across the ring like that before, has never had that kind of, power coming his way. And hats off to Errol Spence for being able to take that and do it like a gentleman into round 8, it brought me back to watching. You remember the reason that we've talked about this on previous podcasts too, how Sean Porter doesn't talk to his dad. Maybe they've made up by now. Hopefully they have. My prayer is that they would make up. But, the idea that the towel gets thrown in on Sean Porter, one of the most violent, come forward, aggressive fighters that you're ever going to meet. And his father throws in the towel. Now you know why. Now you know why. Now, if you have any question in your mind why Kenny Porter saved you, right? Saved you. Maybe this gives you a slightly different view, Mr. Sean Porter.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I want to go back to the 7th round right quick. Now, when all the knockdowns happened and the round was over, Crawford went around the referee and touched Errol Spence's gloves. Now, to me, that said, look, I'm going to win. You're going to lose. So we just got to get through this. It wasn't like I'm going to stop trying to win, but you know what it is. And if you look at the end of that 7th round, and when the round was over and Spence went his way and Crawford went his other way, Crawford purposely went around the referee and touched gloves and had a moment with Spence, letting him know it's over. You know, right. And I know.
Yeah.
Okay, that was in the 7th round.
That's respect. That's respect, Harold.
That's respect. But he's saying, look, we know what the outcome's going to be. It's already clear. So that's what I saw. This is just me saying this. Okay, so in the next round, the 8th round, I feel he was being merciful in a sense because he knew that he could land anything he wanted to land. And there was a couple of times where he actually held back on some uppercuts. I was with a crowd of people, and it was like, he's holding back. And to me, it was the professionalism and the understanding that history was being made.
Yeah.
And he didn't need to just destroy this man to the point where he was unable to fight anymore or whatever, because he had clear situations where he could just really, really hurt him.
Yeah.
And I believe that 7th round knockout, the second knockdown, the second one where he was so clean and so powerful, he knew he could really hurt him.
Yeah.
Because he could set him up for that at any time. And he wanted to acknowledge that. So we got the 8th round coming forward. I think he held back some punches purposely, and he just kind of wanted to work his way into it. To me, at the end of the 8th round, he wanted a towel to be thrown in. He wanted the ref to stop it. He didn't want to just deposit that boy on the canvas in such a manner that would be humiliating to him and all that kind of thing, because he got a heart. He knew his skill set was above that, and he had a heart. So I saw that, and I appreciated that. So that 8th round was what it was. It was merciful in a sense to me. He still applied his skill set. He still took advantage of the opportunities, but I saw mercy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Going into like as I said, going into that 8th round, let's talk about the 8th round. Let's just look at the final moments of the fight. I mean, there's nobody out there that would have thought he would have done that. Like I said, there's nobody that thought that Crawford was going to be maybe there's some people that just, Crawford fans that were like, oh, he's going to win. He's going to dominate. But you know what I'm saying? Like for that to be so one-sided is just incredible. So let's talk about obviously you want to talk about the end of the fight. So go ahead, Harold.
The ninth round, yeah.
Yeah, let's go to the 9th.
Okay, so we have the 8th round of mercy, and he's allowing Spence to, continue to work through the situation. 9th round ensues, and Spence he thinks that he has an opportunity to kind of get where he needs to get. Now, Crawford is hard.
Right.
He's a mean dude in there. His mercy only goes so long. True.
Right.
And he ran out of mercy.
Yeah.
So as the 9th round started, Spence started thinking he could do something. And that is what caused Crawford to go ahead and end it. And he started looking for clean opportunities, not just kind of hitting him when he's close to him and catching him with something up close or anything like that. He started looking for clean shots, because he needed someone to stop the fight. That's how I saw it. So he kind of put himself in a position so he could land cleanly, make it look, it was clean, but more sensationalized. So in that 9th round, he just really started rocking him, and the balance was off, and the head was snapping back, and it was just really something that you had to stop it. You had to stop. You had no choice. I looked for a towel, but James, that's not what he's going to do. So it was definitely up to the referee, and he did so. But that sequence when he did take him out was very violent. It was very staggering. It's the kind of thing that could break your will because your brain's saying, hey, I can still come in here, but the body's saying no. But then when the brain follows and the brain is broken, your will is broken, your mental will is broken, that's another thing.
No, and I mean, the way that Crawford was hitting him in that last round, it was like I said about him being such an amazing finisher. He understood that this fight was over. And it was only the 9th round. He understood that he was going to try to do everything in his power to ease the brunt of it all, and that was what that was about earlier on. But I think, let's talk about what happened immediately after the fight, which I think, these guys are class acts, man.
Yes,
they're class. These two gentlemen were class acts. They go, Crawford tells Spence, you're an amazing fighter. You're a hell of a fighter, right? And I could see that going down, right? And then, Spence replies, hey, thanks for the opportunity, that we made history. They say that they understood what they did last night. And now there's talks about a rematch, doing it again,
So what we saw was real respect, and the real respect was well, appreciated.
Yeah.
Even in the post-fight press conference, Spence was saying that the best man won.
Right.
His timing was possibly thrown off, because of the jab that was coming back, the power jab that was coming back. So I just want to say that initially, I felt the fight would go this way.
Right.
Not as prominent, but I felt that Crawford would pick him off. He would come back with the combinations. He would take advantage of his come forward type style and be successful. I did understand that and saw that and felt that. So I saw that years ago. I felt that years ago. So it played out the way I saw it, but I was squirming in my seat.
Right.
I had to pick Crawford, but I was squirming in my seat because the way that he was landing those punches was, we all like boxing. Yeah, I'm a judge. Yeah. But the point is, it's still hard to see someone get hit like that, of that caliber of skill set, to be so open, like he was an amateur in there with that boy.
Yeah.
So it just showed how far above they were. But as you said, the respect after was great. And it carried over into the press conference, where we can talk about.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah. So I'm trying to see if I can get Dwayne Fenn. He looks like he jumped in on our broadcast today. So I'm trying to see if I can get him in there. I don't see, let's see if we got some audio from Dwayne Fenn, who so graciously is joining us. Coach Dwayne Fenn. Yo, Dwayne, you there? Dwayne, you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh,
yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you. Hey, Dwayne.
I can't see myself on the screen, though, but I can see you guys.
Okay, cool. We can't see you, and it doesn't matter. It's all good. We can hear you. So that's the important thing, because we're just about rounding out the broadcast. We have about like 10, 15 minutes left to talk about this, and we've been waiting for you to jump in on this with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dwayne Fenn, professional boxing coach and partner in crime in the gym. This is my boy, Dwayne Fenn. Thank you for being on the program. And we've been talking about the fight round for round, Coach. So where we are right now is we're at the end of the fight and at the press conference. We're just breaking down the press conference. So I wonder what your thoughts are, Dwayne, about the fight. Just give us your take on the fight last night.
So first of all, it's always good to see you guys. I'm so glad. I really wanted to be part of this podcast today. It was one of those situations for me that I just wanted to speak on because, as you know, in the boxing breakdown, what we do here is that you explain boxing. And that is just this is just a beautiful opportunity to really, for your fans and the listening audience, to understand some things that are happening in a boxing level. So let's just because I know we're pressed for time, let me just go right into touching some things. Prior to this, we talked about, my concern was I couldn't figure out exactly. This is one of those fights where I was 50-50 the whole way through. I couldn't really pick a winner. What I did know, what I believe to be so, is that if Crawford could not find a way to hold off his aggression, that I thought he would have problems, because we're talking about in boxing, how do you do the rounds? How do you get through the 12 rounds? So what we do know as coaches, that it's difficult to get through the 12 rounds if you do not know how to navigate. For example, if you're going to swim across a lake, you're not going to be able to swim full speed all the way. You're going to have to get on your back some. You're going to have to do the breaststroke. You're going to have to doggy paddle a little bit. Then you're going to go full speed again, right? So the question for me was, defensively, would he be able to find his moments to rest as he's navigating those 12 rounds? So when I looked I thought that he would navigate it by maybe trying to hold him, so forth and so on. But the way that he navigated was by using a combination of defenses that allowed him to hold off that aggression. And because of that, him being able to hold off that aggression, it allowed him to actually find offense from Spence's offense. And that was because of his defense. Guys, anyone who wants to talk about boxing who haven't figured this out yet, winners of boxing are masters at defense.
That's right.
So you have to be able to look back. You go back to look at the old film. Let's go back to the 20s and the 40s and watch who are the masters. See, is that there's different components of how they use defense, but all the masters use defense in order to be successful the way that they are. So because of that, Spence had a few problems. How do I find this guy? I'm hoping I could find him with his jab, which, because it was southpaw on southpaw, Crawford was able to use his jab, a superior jab, which they obviously worked on. It's a power jab, timing jab, fast jab, Spence jab. So now Spence has a problem. I use my jab to find him. I can't find him. And when I do find him and try to let my big punches go to the body or to the left hand go, I'm getting countered because it's not allowing him to put his feet where he needs to be to go. So he can't put his feet where he needs to be. Therefore, Crawford can see him and can see him trying to step into those spaces. Easy work. Yes. Easy work, because he at that point it becomes easy work. Now you can't outbox him. You can't bully him. You're not as fast as he is, right? You can't punch in between his spaces because you just don't have the skill set against him. You don't have the skill set against him. Not that you don't have the skill set.
Yeah, I agree with that totally, man. He kept that left hand
levels for this, right?
Yep.
So at that point, somewhere around round 5, I said, he's going to stop him, right? It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. I don't know when he wants to push the gas pedal or so forth and so on, but I knew he was going to stop him. When I take a look at the coaches, Spence's coach was telling him the right thing. Spence's coach was trying to tell him, hey, listen, we have a situation here. It's time for us to start stepping around and let's reestablish our jab, because what we thought was going to happen is not happening. We have to reestablish our jab because that's going to help us get to where we need to be to run our shots. But Spence never made that adjustment. His only adjustment was to try to power up by taking a giant step and stepping in with that big left hand. And his coach was telling him, stop doing that. Start stepping around. Don't give up that and touch him. Take the power off and give me some speed and then add the power. Let's mix it. Let's mix speed and power, because your power shots are telegraphed and he can see it and he's eating off of those shots. For your fans, this is a technical masterpiece when you're talking about boxing.
Yeah, we touched on that clearly. Just to reiterate your point, he took that jab away from him. He put that right hand in his pocket and left him wide open. So once that jab was gone, there was nothing there that he could do. To me, as you said, defensively, he kept Spencer's right hook, which he usually lands. He had his hand up constantly. It was there to block that. So it was very clear that the defense, as you said, was a precursor to him being successful. And what I saw, the jab was taken away, and his vaunted right hand hook or whatever was gone. As you said, his footwork was out of the way because he was taking counters coming back out.
So here's the thing, okay? The results of the fight obviously are in. We've broken down every round of the fight. Dwayne has just, basically given you all, for those of you that are tuning in, listeners, you can hear the excitement as a coach of what he did wrong, what he was not able to execute on, or what his coaching staff was incapable of preparing for, right? And it just leaves all of us, as we listen to Dwayne and we listen to Harold, what we're listening to is like, we're all kind of like just in awe of what he did. I mean, the amazing work that Terence Bud Crawford did last evening is just incredible. And the scores were, 70-79 from Tim Chatham, 70-79 for David Sutherland, and 70-79 by Steve Weisfeld, Harold, your buddy, and that's the score. And, that was the story of what happened. And now what we're sitting here wondering is what's next for Terence Bud Crawford. And I believe he wants one of the Charlo brothers. I believe there's
the press conference. He had a different narrative.
Talk to me.
He was saying he can't no longer do the 147. He doesn't want to do that anymore. He wants to do the 54 either.
Right.
Also, now of course you got the bigger gloves, 10-ounce gloves, right?
Yeah.
And that situation could be different. We just don't know how either one of them are going to do that. Spence wants it at 154. He said he'll do it at 154.
Right.
Now, yes, he initially wanted to get Charlo at 54 undisputed, but Charlo's going to do Canelo, of course.
Right.
So if there is a rematch, it's going to be at 54 between both of them. They both verified that with the press conference.
Right.
What was amazing to me was we're looking at a situation where will there be any belts available? If it's going 54, it can't be 47. So it's just a fight without that lineage of undisputed.
Right. Yeah.
How will that play out with the public? How will that play out with them? We have to see how that's going to work. Well, so that's just the interesting part of it. But Dwayne and Mark, as I said, they were very amicable during the press conference. I mean, all the way down to when Spence left the stage. As you know, those belts have Spence's name on them because he comes into the ring with them. Sometimes the fighter will go ahead and allow the photo op with the winner for all the belts. Sometimes they won't. As you know, T.O. wanted his, and he said, no, you're not going to get this. And I've been at fights where they said, no, you're not going to parade my belt that you just won for me in your photo ops. He did so. But at the end of the press conference, Bud went out of his way to give the belts on camera back to Spence, his belts with his name on that he paid for, and allowed him to take them with him. Now, that may be small, but in the boxing world, that's mad respect. Listen, and I appreciate that.
That's a beautiful gesture. And that without undercutting what you just said about that, as a coach and as someone who has watched, the kill, you're in the kill mode, you're about to execute your final, attack and finish, right? And you watch these guys and they finish bludgeoningly, like they just go for it. But Crawford was able to give him a knuckle pound, there was a moment where he said, look, I'm going to take you out, but you're my boy. You could see that happening. And it was so beautiful to watch that for that respect level. And that's why I say these two gentlemen, these guys are class acts. They really, really are. And so now we turn our attention to what that narrative is. For those of you that are tuning in, boxing gets a lot of bad rap about a lot of bad stuff and people do a lot of bad things. But here's a moment that we need to talk about. This is a moment where you see these two gentlemen in the ring being, the best competitors to one another and also the best sportsmen to one another at the end. And folks, that's how it should go. That's how it should be.
So you always hear me talk about how I like to see fighters conduct themselves. On every podcast that's a big thing for me. So here's the what's so. If you are a real competitor, what you're trying to do is find out what your level is. We don't know until we have these battles and these opportunities to test our skill sets against the very best. Once we do that, because we respect the warrior from our opponent and the warrior within ourselves, real warriors can see people who are cut from the same cloth. Win, lose, or draw, it doesn't matter. They went into this arena to compete. They're grateful for, Spence is grateful allowing Crawford to have an opportunity to let him have an opportunity to see what his level is. And Crawford is thankful for Spence for giving him the opportunity to see what his level is. Right? Yeah. That's what this is about. It's not about disrespect or I told you or this, that,
exactly.
Spence never gave up. He never gave up. He literally went out on his shield. One of the things that I was concerned about was that they would prematurely stop it. I thought the stoppage was perfect. They gave him just enough space to see, could he work his way through this, work his way out of it? They gave him just enough. I thought that was a perfect time to stop it. And this is just a beautiful thing for boxing and also for young people to understand this is what competition is about. Competition is not about disrespecting the other person or making the other person feel small or making yourself being exalting yourself by stepping on someone. No, that's not what this is about. This is about two warriors trying to find out their levels, and you have to respect that. Yeah. And I just love the fact that they understood that.
Yes, that's great because I do high school football and basketball too, varsity, whatever. And after those games, or a playoff game or a tight football game or whatever, those kids are barking at each other with no respect. So I'm kind of used to that. So when I saw this with professionals in this arena with a type of a discipline that requires such violence, and they do that, I'm hoping that the world and these kids can see that there's no room for that. Right. That's like you said, Dwayne, you were able to test yourself. You know your levels above, and Thank you for the opportunity to prove myself. Bud said exactly as you said, Dwayne. I needed him so I could show the world where I was, what my level was. And he spoke to that in the press conference. So, exactly what you said was so clear. And I hope the world and the kids and other people see that there's no need to berate after you've been successful because you've given the opportunity to show your skill set, as you said, Dwayne.
You guys, listen, I want to thank you guys for both being on the Boxing Breakdown. We are right at 1 hour. And if you are listening in, thank you for being with us, whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for joining us. And if you are tuning in on YouTube, we appreciate you being with us. Hit the like and subscribe button below. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Wherever you go on social media, you can find us at The Boxing Breakdown. And I want to thank you, Dwayne Fenn, amazing boxing coach and judge, professional boxing judge, Mr. Harold Hunt. Thank you guys for being on the broadcast today. And I will see you guys later on the next episode of The Boxing Breakdown. Peace and love.
Okay, thank you guys. I appreciate you guys. Always good. Always good to be with you guys.
Join host Mark Roxey and special guests as they break down all aspects of the boxing world, including news, business, management, training, promotions, fan reactions, upcoming events, matchups, future boxing stars, title fights, state of the boxing world, and all the stuff you don't see when you watch boxing. This podcast is released each week on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Live streamed on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook Live. It's the Boxing Breakdown, hosted by Mark Roxey.
That's right. Like and subscribe, baby. Peace.